If you think General Motors has made only a few cool cars, well, you're wrong. These guys have built hundreds of muscle car models, and with some of the rarest ones coming in the 60s and 70s. I've dug up 8 of them, and I'll be telling you about them right now. Starting with number 8, the 1970 Chevrolet Chevel SS. Kicking off this list, let's talk about the 1970 Chevrolet Chevel SS 454 LS6. Now, you may think, what's so special about a Chevel? But hold on, this isn't just any Chevel. This is the king of Chevels. The LS6 version came with a 454 cubic inch V8 that cranked out 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. In 1970, that kind of power was almost unheard of for a production car. This thing was built to dominate the drag strip, and it did just that. But here's the crazy part. Chevy didn't just slap a big engine in it and call it a day. The LS6 came with a heavy-duty suspension, upgraded brakes, and a reinforced drivetrain to handle all that raw power. You couldn't just step on the gas without knowing what you were doing, or you'd find yourself in a ditch real fast. Sadly, GM only made about 4,475 of these monsters, and over the years, many of them have disappeared due to crashes, rust, or just being driven into the ground. That's why today, a well-preserved LS6 Chevel can go for over $200,000 at auction. That's how rare it is. Number 7. The 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air 4. Now, here's something you probably don't see every day. A 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air 4. In fact, just saying the name out loud makes you feel like you're about to start a race. Pontiac introduced the Judge as a response to Plymouth's budget-friendly Roadrunner, and the idea was simple: make a high-performance muscle car that wouldn't break the bank, and boy, did they deliver. The Judge package came with flashy graphics, a bold spoiler, and a 400 cubic inch V8 engine. But the Ram Air 4 version? Well, that's where things got serious. This upgraded engine was built with high-flow cylinder heads, a hotter camshaft, and an underrated 370 horsepower. In reality, it made way more power than Pontiac claimed. Now here's the kicker though. Only about 360 of these were ever made, making it one of the rarest muscle cars Pontiac ever built. That means if you find one sitting in a barn somewhere, you might as well have just won the lottery. You know why? It's because these cars are insanely rare and valuable, with pristine examples selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars today. Number 6. The 1970 Buick GSX Stage 1. This next one might surprise you, but it's a true gem, and that's the 1970 Buick GSX Stage 1. And if you think Buicks are boring, well, think again. This car was Buick's way of saying, oh, you thought we only made luxury cars. Well, watch this. The GSX was based on the Buick Skylark, but with a massive 455 cubic inch V8 under the hood. The Stage 1 package cranked out 510 pound-feet of torque, which was the highest torque rating of any American car at the time. That's more than a Hemi Cuda or a Corvette from the same era. This thing was an absolute monster on the streets. But here's where things get interesting. Buick only built 678 GSX Stage 1s, and they didn't come in a variety of colors. You had 2 choices: Apollo White or Saturn Yellow, both with black racing stripes that made the car look even meaner. Even though it had insane power, the GSX was still a Buick at heart, which meant it had a surprisingly smooth ride and a luxurious interior. It was like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Today, these cars are highly sought after, with some selling for over $200,000 at auction. So if you ever see a bright yellow Buick with black stripes roaring down the road, don't laugh. It might just be one of the rarest and most powerful muscle cars of the 1970s. Number 5. The 1967 Chevrolet Camaro Z28. So, I know you probably know the Camaro, right? It's one of the most famous muscle cars that was ever made, but the 1967 Camaro Z28, well, that's a whole different beast. Chevy didn't just build this car to look cool, they built it to win, and not just any races. It was designed specifically to dominate the Trans Am racing series, which is a high-stakes battle between American muscle cars on the track. This meant that Chevy had to follow a strict rule that limited engine size to 305 cubic inches, so they got creative. Instead of throwing in a massive engine like everyone else, Chevy made a lighter, high-revving 302 cubic inch V8 that produced around 290 horsepower, although insiders say it was actually over 350. This engine loved to scream past 7,000 RPM, which was rare for a muscle car at the time. And it wasn't just about power, as the Z28 also had upgraded suspension, disc brakes, and a close ratio 4-speed manual transmission that made it a dream to drive. Now here's the kicker. GM only built around 600 of these in 1967. Yeah, only 600. That makes this one of the rarest first-generation Camaros ever. So if you ever see one in the wild, take a long look, because you may never see another one again. Number 4, the 1971 Oldsmobile 442 W30. Next is the Oldsmobile 442 W30, which doesn't always get the love it deserves. But trust me, this thing was an absolute monster on the streets. Oldsmobile wasn't messing around when they built this. They knew they had to compete with the Chevelles, Mustangs, and Chargers of the world, so they went all in. The W30 package wasn't just some fancy badge. It came with a massive 455 cubic inch V8 that cranked out around 350 horsepower and a mind-blowing 500 pound-feet of torque. That's more torque than most modern muscle cars today. This thing could launch off the line and leave other cars in the dust. And because Oldsmobile wanted it to really stand out, they added fiberglass hood scoops for extra air intake and gave it a wicked stripped-down performance look. But here's the thing, Oldsmobile didn't make many of these. Only 1,200 were ever built with the W30 package. That's a tiny number considering how many muscle cars GM was churning out at the time. So if you ever come across a real 442 W30, don't just walk by it. You're looking at one of the rarest and most powerful Oldsmobiles that was ever made. Number 3, the 1970 Chevrolet Corvette ZR1. Now, if you think a Corvette is just a pretty little sports car, think again. The 1970 Corvette ZR1 was on a whole different level. But this wasn't just a fast car, it was built for serious performance, as Chevy took the already impressive Corvette and made it an absolute track monster. Under the hood sat a 350 cubic inch LT1 V8 that produced 370 horsepower. But here's the thing, it wasn't just about raw power. The ZR1 package also came with heavy duty everything. We're talking upgraded brakes, a stiffer suspension, an aluminum radiator, and no unnecessary extras. That's right, no air conditioning, no fancy radio, no power windows. Why? Well, it's because Chevy wanted it to be as light as possible for the tracks, because this car wasn't built for cruising, it was built for domination. So just how rare is this thing? Well, unfortunately, only 53 of these were ever made. That means you could go your entire life without ever seeing one in person, but if you do, take a picture, because you've just spotted one of the rarest Corvettes in existence. Number 2, the 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1. Alright, buckle up because we're about to talk about one of the most legendary muscle cars ever built, the 69 Camaro ZL1. Now, you may think the Z28 is already a peak Camaro, but the ZL1? That's a whole different beast. This wasn't just some upgraded Camaro with fancy badging, no. This thing was built for one reason, to dominate the drag strip. Under the hood was a 427 cubic inch all-aluminum V8, the same engine GM had been using in their Can-Am race cars. That's right, they stuffed a full-on race engine into a Camaro and let it loose on the streets. This thing cranked out at least 430 horsepower, but in reality, it was probably way more than that. Some estimates put it closer to 500 horsepower, which made it one of the most powerful muscle cars of its time. Now here's where it gets even crazier. GM never intended to sell these to the public. This car was only ever made because a Chevy dealer named Fred Gibb found a loophole in GM's rules. He used Chevrolet's COPO, or Central Office Production Order System, to sneak these monsters into production, and just 69 nice of them were ever built. That makes this one of the rarest Camaros and one of the most valuable of all time. Today, if you're you're lucky enough to find one, be ready to shell out over $1 million because that's how much collectors are willing to pay for a piece of this muscle car history. Number 1. The 1970 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air 4 convertible. Now, for the rarest muscle car on this list, we have the 1970 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air 4 convertible. If you're sitting down, you might want to hold on to something because this one is ridiculously rare. And if you're not sitting down, you might want to. We're talking about a car that Pontiac only built 5 of. Not 50, not 500, not even 5,000. 5. That's less than the number of fingers on both your hands. In fact, you have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than seeing one of these in the wild. But what made this car so special? Well, for starters, it had the legendary Ram Air 4 engine, which was the most powerful motor Pontiac ever made. It produced 370 horsepower, but just like the Camaro ZL1, that was probably an understatement. Many believe it actually made over 400 horsepower in real life, and since it was a convertible, you could feel every bit of that power with the wind in your hair. This was the ultimate GTO, but for those who wanted speed, style, and exclusivity. Now let's talk about money. If you somehow find one of these for sale, be prepared to sell your house, your car, and maybe even your neighbor's house, because these go for millions. In fact, one of them sold for $1.1 million at auction. So if you're lucky enough to own one, congrats. You officially own one of the rarest and most expensive GM muscle cars ever built. And with that said, which of these rare muscle cars from the 60s and 70s would you love to own? Tell us in the comments and subscribe to my channel for all the muscle car content you'll ever need. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the open road.